Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us yet again on our wonderful Monday real estate updates. I'm Alex Ward, the 2022 Broker Manager of the Year for the Realtors Association of Edmonton, and I have the pleasure of being joined, as always, by Kayla Frerot, Home Financing Advisor with ScotiaBank. Hi, Kayla.
Good morning.
Hi. So Kayla today is going to be shedding some common questions that she gets asked, mostly around down payment and closing costs. So Kayla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was going over the most recent, or the most asked questions that I normally have when we're doing credit applications, and that usually surrounds down payment, how much do I need for a down payment, and what are closing costs. So I figured I would go over what that looks like. So for your down payment, the minimum down payment that you can have when you're purchasing a home is 5%. If you have a down payment that's up to 20%, that means your mortgage is going to be insured, which means it goes through one of our major insurers, which is either Sagen, Canada Guarantee, or CMHC. They all have the same rates. They all are going to cost the same as far as the insurance piece goes, but those are the three insurers that we have here in Canada. So you have to have at least 5% down payment. Now that down payment can be either from your savings or it can also be gifted from a direct family member. For the down payment, if you have less than a 20% down payment, you have to give us a 90-day history of that down payment and where it came from. So we have to verify that those savings, if it is coming from your own savings, are in fact your savings and not from somebody else. And if it is a gift from a direct family member, then normally you will have to fill out the person that is gifting you the funds will have to fill out a gift letter, and then that comes to us, and that verifies the down payment that way. Now, in addition to having that at least minimum 5% down payment, when you have less than a 20% down payment, you also have to show that you have 1% in closing cost. Now, what that means is that you have 1% in additional savings saved up for all the closing costs that come with purchasing a new home. And we will go over what those closing costs look like in a few minutes here, but we do have to verify 1% of the closing cost is what it is. So if you're buying a house for $300,000, you have to show us that you have an additional $3,000 in savings up and above that down payment that you're already putting down. So that's one of the major questions that we have, and a lot of people don't know that we do have to show that to the bank that you have that additional 1% of the purchase price in savings to cover those closing costs. Now, if you have a 20% down payment or more, your mortgage is not insured, or more recently known as conventional. So what that means is you have to give us a 30-day history of where that down payment is coming from, and we don't have to verify closing costs in this case because you do have a 20% down payment, so you do show that you do have those savings in place. So we're not worried or concerned about that 1% closing costs on that piece there. So that's for the down payment. The minimum is 5%. If you get up to the 20% mark, you're not insured, so you don't pay that insurance premium. So that's the biggest difference there. Now for closing costs, what do closing costs mean? Closing costs are all the costs associated with closing the purchase of your mortgage. So what those closing costs look like are if there's an appraisal required. So if you have a property that's a little bit further out from the city center, if there's not enough comparables in the area where a bank can get an internal valuation on it, is what we call it, then we do send an appraiser out there. Appraisals will normally cost about $300. Appraisals will only usually happen if you have a 20% down payment or more, because again, if it's insured, the insurer will do their own appraisal on their side, if required. Not all mortgage applications will need an appraisal. It really is dependent on the area of the property and if there is enough comparables or houses and properties that have sold that are like the property that you're purchasing in the area. So apart from the appraisal, there's also going to be the inspection costs. Now, the inspection happens after you know that your financing is good. So you submitted your paperwork to the bank after you've made your offer. The bank, we've said that you are good to go on your financing, and then you schedule your inspection. Your inspection is scheduled with your realtor to make sure, or with the inspector, and your realtor will most likely have a recommendation for the inspector, that they deal with. And you will get your property inspected to make sure that there's no major issues that you need to be concerned about that might cost you money down the road, or any structural issues, any mold, any kind of things that can come up that you wouldn't see. Now that inspection will normally, I believe on the market right now, it's around the $500 to $550 mark. It does depend on the size of the property, where the property is. So that's definitely a piece that your realtor will be able to chat with you about. Now, apart from the inspection cost, there is also moving costs. So are you going to get a moving truck? Are you moving from Ontario to Alberta? What does that look like for you? Are you going to get a bunch of family members over and you're going to buy them pizza and beer? What does that look like? But there is some moving costs associated, right? And then apart from that, the biggest closing cost that you are going to have is your legal fees. So that's going to be your lawyer's fees to close the deal. Now, an average on the legal fees depending on what lawyer you use, and again what the property size is and what the mortgage is. Some mortgages are a little bit more complicated than others and the lawyer will have to do a bit more work on his side. It usually is around the $1,500 mark, so always budget for around that. And there also might be a tax adjustment that the lawyer will chat with you about, depending on how the sellers of the property that you're purchasing have paid their property taxes in the past. So always budget for $1,500 for the lawyer's fees, just to make sure you have those funds in place because there will be a cost associated with that. So normally those are what the closing costs look like. I do get asked quite often what that entails. So I just wanted to make sure I kind of gave you guys a list of what that looks like, including the moving costs, because moving property and moving a whole household to another whole household is a cost, right? Between gas and vehicles and whoever's helping you out, or if you are hiring movers, whatever that looks like, there is going to be a cost associated there. So that's kind of what the down payment looks like in the closing costs. Next time I do have some other questions that I get asked as well, and we'll go over those.
Yeah, no, those are great. It's always good to have a better idea of what's the overall process looks like. And the great thing is if you're listening to this live on Facebook or listening to it later on our podcast, Maxwell Devonshire Realty Podcast, or following us on our YouTube channel, the great news is for you that we here at Maxwell Devonshire Realty have these preferred partners that we can definitely recommend you to take care of your moving, your lawyers, your home inspection, all of those wonderful things. Kayla, of course, is a preferred partner of ours as well, and she has been working phenomenally with our associates to ensure that our clients get service the best. So when you're in our hands, you know it's going to be taken care of smoothly and professionally. So Kayla, thank you so much for joining us yet again. I just mentioned it, but if you're listening to us on our podcast, Maxwell Devonshire Realty Podcast, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Or if you're watching us live on Facebook, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kayla.
Thank you.